Welcome to a football show here on the 440 Sports Network. My name is Braden Gall, and you can follow me on Twitter at Braden Gall.
And my name is Zach Lyons. You can follow me on Twitter at FWordsPod.
That's right. Listen to the Football and Other Efforts podcast with you and Mr. Lebowski on Tuesdays from Broadway Sports Media. You can read all of his scribings at Broadway Sports Media. Go subscribe, pay for good journalism, all that good stuff at Broadway Sports Media. Today on the show, SEC win totals for 2022. Every team in the SEC. Vegas is trying to make some money off us. We'll give you our picks for those lines here coming up a little bit later on. The Rooney Rule discussion needs to be had here because Ray Horton, former defensive coordinator, interim coach, has been added to the suit that's going on against the NFL based on some Mike Mularkey comments that happened years ago. So we'll get to that. There's only really one question, Zach, that we have to ask about that. Concession prices at the Nashville SC Stadium is going to tie into our conversation with the latest news about the new Titan Stadium deal that is coming out, some taxes and stuff. We'll get into some of the details. We'll explain all of that today on the show. So a lot of stuff to do today, Zach. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're good.
I'm doing well, doing great. Looking at these prices, I have it pulled up on my screen, these Nashville SC prices, and I won't be doing well later if I ever go to a game.
Well, I think the stadium is spectacular, and we'll get to those prices here in just a minute. But I did see that. You sent me that, and I was kind of like, you've got to be kidding me. You've got a chance here to do something right, and you just totally wet the bed. So I think the Titans need to learn from this conversation because obviously Amy listens to the podcast all the time. So normally we're with you on a Tuesday. We're going to move this to Thursday, and then we got some things in the works for you guys coming up in the future. So subscribe, check out the YouTube page. We put the interview up every single week on the YouTube page. We've also got all the other shows. Make sure you're subscribing to everything. Push all the buttons we're asking you to push. Follow on the socials, all that great stuff. And, of course, remember our great sponsor, the Kingston Group, BuildKG.com, is the website. They are Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm. Real estate in this town is completely drunk. Zach, you know this. I know this. It's good for us who own homes, but it means big decisions have major financial ramifications. And if you're going to have to make major financial decisions, you might as well have some help from some experts. So make sure you call the Kingston Group and have a conversation. That's all we're asking, Zach. Just have a conversation.
Just got to talk to them. You don't have to buy anything. We encourage you to buy something, but you should definitely have a conversation with them.
Well, when it comes to, spending $100,000 or whatever, you need to make sure you're talking to the right people and get the right advice. Right. This is where, of course, the Kingston Group comes in, buildkg.com. All right, so new stadium details. Nate Rao broke this, I believe, Wednesday morning of Axios. The next sort of piece that's falling into place, Zach, if you want to sort of look at all the big puzzle pieces of a new Titan Stadium, we've got the $500 million from the governor and the state office that, of course, has got some strings attached to it, retractable roof, where it's going to be built, a lot of stuff there. We've got the previous legislation that was voted on that's going to reroute some taxes that's already sort of voted on and already settled. We know the Titans ownership is going to put in a big chunk and the NFL is going to put in a big chunk. Well, the last big chunk is what does the city need to pay for? And some of this, as Nate reported, could be done on a hotel motel tax increase from 6 to 7%. They can push it up to 8 if they want to. Butch Spiridon estimates. The estimate is that it's going to be worth about, he says 10 million in the story, but also push that estimate up to, 15, 18, 20 million potentially if they get some quote unquote mega events. So this is another huge piece of the puzzle that if we can raise $400 million over 10 years or over 15 years, that would be a huge piece of the puzzle that mostly Davidson County residents would not be paying for the new stadium.
Well, and it's also, to clarify, it's 17 million to 20 million extra on top of what is already being generated, because that anywhere from 10 to 20, I know it's a wide range, but let's be honest, bachelorette parties love it here. Everybody loves it here. It's going to be up in the 17 million to 20 million range as it progresses and you get events and stuff like that. But that's on top of what they had the last full fiscal year pre-pandemic was $60 million in revenue in 1 year. So now you're adding 17 to 20 million on top of that. So that's roughly $80 million is what you possibly would max out on per year. So that's going to pay what is estimated to be $300 million from this hotel motel tax. That's going to be paid off pretty quickly. I mean, that's like nothing in the big scheme of things. And you look at it, I thought what was interesting in Nate's Twitter thread that actually started breaking down all the numbers was that the 700 million that was reported on was going to be coming from the Titans. He has it listed as the total from the Titans and NFL.
Yep.
Which I think is an interesting piece of news because that's a little bit different than what was originally reported, because we were all thinking and assuming 700 from the team, 150 to 2 million, 200 million coming from the NFL.
Right.
All in all, this is a fantastic deal for a stadium. And you look over what the Bills are announcing today is like, I mean, they're still in all these negotiations, but the city and the county is still paying way too much. And it's the most that any NFL stadium has done by far. And I look at this and I'm thinking, well, basically the tourists are going to be paid for a bunch of this crap.
So I had somebody, I totally agree. I had somebody tweet me and like, oh, you saying that people in Nashville don't stay in their hotels? And my first thought was, no. Let me ask you.
Hey, listen, if I'm from Goodlettsville and I drive down and I get drunk, I could be persuaded instead of driving back. I'm looking at either doing a lift and paying parking fees or just getting a hotel and just continue drinking and just making a whole night of it.
Okay, let me ask you this. How long have you lived here? Like almost 20 years, right? About roughly?
Yeah. I've been here since 2003 in the area.
I've been in Nashville since 97. I was actually thinking about this. How many nights have you stayed in a hotel in Davidson County?
A lot, because I used to, all my friends lived. Yeah. All my friends, when I got to the age of drinking and I moved.
So 19.
And I moved back from Memphis and moved to Columbia back in 2008 and lived there full time. All my friends lived in Nashville. So at the time, it was like $140 for a hotel room. I'm paying for a hotel room from Saturday, waking up Sunday, going to the game.
Okay.
And then driving back. So
let me take it back. Let me take that back. So, so that's just for football games, you're saying, just for Titans games?
Well, for football games and like events and stuff like that.
How many nights did you live in Davidson County and stay in a Davidson County hotel?
0.
Okay. That's my point, is that if you live outside of Davidson County, you are not affected by what the cost of this stadium could be, right? Like the Metro, if the Metro is going to pay X number of dollars for this and you live in Murfreesboro, well, that's not your taxes, right?
Right.
So it's about I have lived in Davidson County since 2005. I have stayed in a Davidson County hotel 2 nights, 2 times. One was the night I got married, so I'm never doing that again. So whatever happens, that wedding thing is the only time I'm doing it. No matter what happens in the future. It was one night because we had a downtown wedding and we stayed in a downtown hotel for our sort of like first night before we went on our honeymoon a couple days later. The other one was between 2 houses where we closed on one and then closed on another, and there was a 1-day window between 2 houses, and we stayed in a hotel for 1 night, my wife and I at the time. So 2 nights. So I say all this to say Davidson County taxpayers will not be paying for this source of revenue. I think it's safe to say. Yeah. I could not believe I got that comment on Twitter, by the way. But
it's like, I don't understand what people. Maybe that person just stays in hotels constantly. I don't know.
I don't get it.
So far, I mean, you still have to get legislative approval on what's coming from the state, the hotel motel tax. But so far, this is turning out to be $1.7 billion that is not really affecting your Davidson County residents. And that's really what you're hoping for.
I am curious. So the reason this works is that if they're revenue bonds, so people invest in the revenue bonds, then the tax revenue stream that we're talking about here, this new one, would then pay off those revenue bonds, which is not part of the general operating bonds and budget for the city. So that doesn't take any money. Now, I do think there has to be probably a dollar figure somewhere from the city.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
there eventually should be.
What I have been told and what I understand is that it is going to be tied to all of the things that go into the stadium and the East Bank development from like an operational standpoint. So like, whether it's planting trees or paving roads or putting in sewer lines or managing electrical grids or all the things that you sort of have to put in place to like make things work, right? That the city is probably going to have to pay for that. And again, if that's $100 million, is that going to pass through legislation? I don't know. I don't know. If you're telling me that of a $2 billion stadium, we've already got 1.8 paid, I think that's a hell of a deal for the Titans to be starting from. So,
yeah, I mean, really, in all honesty, this is it's just fantastic news. It just keeps getting better and better every time something comes out about this stadium, and I'm all here for it. And I hope that because they have basically been talking about repeatedly Atlanta, that the prices inside the stadium will be much more manageable for everybody that attends these games, because that's really still the major holdup when you're buying all these high priced tickets, and then you got to bring and pay for all this food, all this drink, and all that kind of stuff. So
this is where the Titans can win people over.
Right.
Especially if there's a little bit of money that they've got to pay, like we talked about, eventually there'll be a dollar figure. But you sent me this tweet with a photo of the prices at the concession stand at the new Nashville SC Stadium, Geodis Park down there in Wedgwood, Houston. It is going to be a gorgeous facility. I've been in there. It's amazing. It's spectacular.
Every picture I see, I have to try. I'm like guessing, is this a computer generated image or is this a real image? Because it looks fake. That's how good it looks. It looks fake. Every picture.
100% agree. I took a few photos when they had the naming announcement rights, and we got to sort of tour the facility. And I also was like, wait a second, this looks like a rendering.
It does.
It's wild. So you sent me this, and a premium large can beer, $15.99. What are we talking about?
It has to be, I would assume, 64 ounces. Like, is it a mini keg, a pony keg? You remember they used to have a Heineken pony keg? Like it was a really small guy. Yeah. That's what it better be for $15.99, because that is utterly ridiculous. Or just give me a 6-pack of beer for $15.99. Like,
unbelievable.
Let's get creative. If you're going to charge that amount of money, just give a 6-pack of beer and just call it a day.
So what's a double like whiskey at Bridgestone will probably be like $21. A double at the Ryman's probably about $21, $20.
Right.
So it just sucks. It just sucks. That's all.
It's kind of crazy, because you look at the fountain soda, $6. A bottle of water is $5. You're looking at a hot dog for $6.50. You're looking at French fries for $6. None of these prices make sense to me. I'm hoping that this was just kind of like someone just threw up, because they were given a tour, right? They just kind of threw up a couple of the menu items and then just threw up some numbers.
Yeah, they vomited. All right.
Yeah, they just vomited. Like, it's just not really, this isn't real. I kept expecting Nashville Soccer Club or Geodis or whoever runs the Twitter account related to this to say, oh, those are kind of like, we just kind of put those up there. That's not the real pricing. Because that's outrageous, not only just for a normal sporting event, but for a soccer sporting event, I feel this is outrageously priced.
So again, the chicken tenders and fries, $14. Like, give me a fucking break with that. What's interesting is we just got done with the Masters, and you talked about Atlanta. You already mentioned it. Like, it is so easy to win a giant PR battle in a matter of seconds. Now, I don't know what the exact dollar figure is that you would cost yourself if you wanted to lower concession prices, but the Masters does this. You can get a beer for $3. You can get a hot dog for $2. You can get an egg salad sandwich for $2. Like, it is truly like 50 cents for like a 6-pack of crackers. Like, it's absurd. And Atlanta, the Falcon Stadium, is not much different. I just think if you're the Titans, you're Amy Adams Strunk, and you're doing all this to like win over all this PR, like just do the right thing and keep it affordable for people. Charge them out the ass for the PSLs. Like, if you want to charge people for tickets, fine. But don't ruin people's lives going to sporting events and concerts with $15 beers.
I mean, at this point, if I were to go to a Nashville Soccer Club game, I'm using that time while I'm at the game to pretty much sober up, because I'm just going to get drunk before I go and have a great time before I go, and I'll just get drunk after, because I'm not paying these prices, and I probably won't even eat. I hope they have water fountains, because I don't think I would even buy a bottle of water. It's just outrageously priced.
When's the last water fountain you drank out of at a stadium?
Ooh, at a stadium, that would have to be back in high school, probably. like I don't think I've ever done one since then.
I can't remember walking through a stadium, especially not Nissan or like the Vanderbilt football stadium, and seeing a water fountain and being like, yeah, I'm going to grab a sip real fast.
Yeah.
That's never crossed my mind.
I mean, it's a new stadium, so it's going to be a very clean water fountain if they have them.
That's
so
true.
I'd be willing to take the risk at least in year one.
All right. May 1st, Zach Lyons will be drinking out of a water fountain because he refuses to pay your astronomically ridiculous water bottle prices.
$5 for a bottle of water. I mean, how big is it? I mean, that's I guess what matters is how big is it. But this is worse than getting price gouged at movie theaters.
Yeah.
And this is way worse than it. This is way more expensive to go to just to go here than it is to take a whole trip to the movie theater.
So for $4.99 for $5, it better have a handle.
Yeah.
Like there needs to be a handle that I can carry the water with.
Like, and if you're charging $6 for a fountain soda, do what Atlanta does and have they have soda fountain machines. So you can refill your drink.
Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. Now, those will kill you. And I'm not a big I can't remember the last time. I think it's been 25 years since I drank a can of soda. So I'm not a big soda guy. It's paying $6 to drink a whole fountain drink is that feels self-destructive to me.
You can get a Powerade maybe in there.
Yeah, that's fair. Just give me citrus cooler Gatorade. Where have all the citrus coolers gone? If you know, if you can tell me a gas station or a location that sells citrus cooler Gatorade, tweet at me at Braden Gall and let me know because I'll go just buy them out because I can't find citrus cooler anywhere. All right, so this Rooney stuff, we'll touch on this quickly and then we'll move on to some SEC win totals for 2022, Zach. But I listen, it's important to talk about because I think actually, to be honest with you, I think everything is true in this story. Brian Flores, who I think is a pretty good coach, fired from Miami, files a lawsuit against the NFL, basically discrimination. What I'm fascinated by is Mike Mularkey says all these things about the hiring process as a Titans head coach, but he says it in 2020, like 2 years ago. He says all this stuff on some stupid Steelers podcast, and now it comes out that he was told that he had the job, which we all kind of know is, again, we can argue and debate hiring of Mike Mularkey is a good or bad decision. Like we can have that's an interesting discussion. But this is sort of where all things are true, Zach. I don't know how you feel. I think clearly black coaches are not getting the number of opportunities they should be given. I think that's a fact. But this really is just one question for me. This brings me to one singular question. Do you think Amy Adams Strunk and John Robinson are racist?
Absolutely not. I mean,
that's it, right? Isn't that the only question? Isn't that the only question you have to ask?
And that's the question they have to prove, right? I mean, in this whole lawsuit, they have to prove racial discrimination intent because that's really what matters. He wasn't racially discriminated against. He was candidately discriminated against because they interviewed Terrell Austin before him. Who is a minority head coach or minority candidate. And then they interviewed Doug Marrone and then they interviewed Ray Horton. It was the worst kept secret that Mike Mularkey was the coach. And let me say this. If you want to hire someone in-house that's your interim head coach that's already proved something, I feel like you shouldn't have to interview anybody else. Now, these people were given a chance to change their mind. And none of them did. And are we really surprised that none of them did? And maybe that goes back to the quality of coaches they brought in for the interview, which I had an issue with at the time.
Yeah, yes.
That's what everybody
it was not a good pool of candidates.
This was the worst kept secret. Everybody knew it's Mike Mularkey's job to lose, and everybody knew they picked a GM that was going to be forced to work with Mike Mularkey. That was one of their top reasons for hiring John Robinson was because he was willing to take on Mike Mularkey as his head coach.
And Mariota as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, it's crazy to me that people call this a smoking gun and blah, blah. It's very, he said, she said, and can you really believe Mike Mularkey and where he's coming from and all this stuff? And because they've already said they never told him that. So
consider the source, right?
Yeah.
A
guy that's very pissed off that he had lost his job and has burned Mariota since he's left. He's burned pretty much anything that he could lay his hands on. And spare me this, I just have felt so much guilt and I really got to get this guilt, off me, and relieve this guilt.
Why didn't you bring this up when Brian Flores first filed the lawsuit?
Why didn't you bring it up when you were told
when you took the job?
When you were told that you were going to get the job and they were going to interview 3 other candidates?
Look, let's
spare me this bullshit.
No, I'm with you, dude, on this because here's the thing: we are not suggesting that this isn't a problem in hiring coaches. College and pro, This is a very serious problem.
Massive problem.
Black coaches do not get enough chances. Period. End of discussion. There's no question that is a true thing in this conversation. College and pro, assistant and head coach, all of the above. It is absolutely a problem. But to suggest that Amy Adams Strunk makes decisions based on the color of someone's skin as to who will be the head coach of her football team, $1 billion business, to me is flat out ridiculous. It's just insane to me, considering what she stands for. And here's the other thing. Now I'm all freaking worked up and pissed off about it.
I like it. Let's do it.
Because here's the
usually
thing.
That's me.
I know. Here's the problem with the internet and with Twitter and with 2022. Amy Adams Strunk is not defined by one thing that she says or does. None of us are. She is defined by a body of work in her lifetime. That is what we know about Amy Adams Strunk. And if you're telling me that I have an entire body, 10 years, I don't know how many years she's been the priority owner, like 5, 6 years, 7 years, whatever the number is.
Well, since 2016, right?
2016.
I mean, that was her first year.
At least. So 6 years, 7 years almost, we have seen her act and behave a certain way. We have seen all the things she does and says for so many people in this community. And you're telling me that you're going to throw all of those behavioral patterns away and just assume that she hired Mike Mularkey because he was white.
And I don't necessarily think it's gonna sound weird because you're walking a tightrope when you talk about this thing.
Well, now also, sorry to cut you off. Sorry. I do realize the irony of two middle-aged white men having this conversation. I just want to point that out.
We always say that on the football and the F words too. Look, I don't think that they did anything wrong, to be honest with you. As far as from the standpoint of the context of the lawsuit itself. Now, can you say that they did something wrong in not bringing in quality candidates to challenge Mike Mularkey? Absolutely. And those candidates needed to be a good mix of minority and white and whatever else you want to throw in there, because he needed to be challenged. So their issue is not bringing in quality coaches to challenge it. But the issue with the Rooney Rule is that you're forcing owners who've already have their mind made up who they want to put people through a charade, whether it's a charade for a minority or a charade for a white coach. It's a charade, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
So I've came up with a solution. I've actually football and other F words. This past Tuesday, we came up with a solution. Specifically, I did. During your
throw Lebowski under the bus. I like it.
During your head coaching tenure, you should meet specific requirements that if you get fired and you don't meet a threshold for success in your tenure as a head coach, as a white candidate, you shouldn't get an opportunity to interview for a head coaching position for 5 years.
Wow. That's like all of the NFL coaches.
We would never get a retread of Adam Gase, but look at Josh McDaniels. He never officially got a job anywhere. Technically, you can't really count the Colts because he never really coached there. But there was still a 5-year gap between all this stuff between now and here, more than 5 years between Denver and there. That's how it should be. Matt Nagy, Adam Gase, when Matt Rule eventually gets fired after this season, these guys shouldn't get head coaching jobs ever again. Or at least for 5 years, a 5-year moratorium on those guys getting interviews.
So I love your idea for a variety of reasons. Number one, the minority candidate getting them opportunities is I'm in favor of that. I also hate the retread thing that happens in the NFL. It's so bad. It happens with coordinators in college. I don't know why. Maybe it's friendship or loyalty or sort of just like the known commodity. Like nobody is creative and innovative and takes risks. Actually, like Amy Adams Strunk did, firing a playoff coach to go hire Mike Vrabel, who was a coordinator of like the worst defense in the NFL. So like that's an innovative, creative, risky move that she made, and it has completely worked out with Mike Vrabel. While I agree with all of that stuff, Zach, I don't think you can be like, well, if you lost 70% of your games, you're not eligible for a job. Like that does. I feel like that's going one step too far.
I think it needs to be multiple things. Like, did you ruin a quarter? Did you try to ruin a quarterback on your way in? So Matt Nagy, he's ruined Mitch Trubisky, and he's purposely tried to ruin Justin Fields. Did you
Sam Darnold?
How many of your free agent hits have been something for what kind of money are you spending in training? There should be a couple of different things to do. How many stupid moves did you make?
So
are you considered one of the worst quarterbacks of the last 5 years? And for a lot of these white guys, that would be a big yes.
That's true. And it would be as arbitrary as forcing someone to interview like a candidate for the purposes of just doing the thing. Like it's
right.
Like I know what the goal and the intent of the Rooney Rule is, and we all should agree with it. And again, you have to acknowledge that this is a real issue in football circles. It just is. You have to acknowledge that it's a fact.
It's an issue in any business because we
no
talked
question.
about this because people hire people like them. I mean, that's just unfortunately that's the thing. So until you get a minority ownership into the NFL, hope maybe with the Denver Broncos is your best chance currently, you may continue to see this problem. But I remember when I first got into fantasy football and I was learning all the coaches, all the players, and all the stuff fantasy football, there were 7 minority head coaches at one time. So I don't know why it's trended this far away, other than it's just a lack of coaching talent, and you got to allow for a little bit of, are these guys good interviews and good fits? Yeah. Because there has to be a little bit of that too, because there's been a couple of white guys who don't get jobs that you're kind of like, why isn't this guy getting a job? It's tough. It is a tough tightrope to walk because you can't force owners who are basically Roger Goodell can't force his bosses to do something that they don't feel is in the best interest of their and team success. So you can't honestly also sit here and say that Adam Gase is the guy. Right.
So, and Sylvester Crum, I believe, was the first black head coach in the SEC at Mississippi State. And that was like recently. That was like 20 years ago. And I don't think like Derek Mason's not in the SEC anymore. Joker Phillips is not at Kentucky anymore. Like I'm trying to think, off the top of my head, I don't believe there is a minority coach in the SEC currently. I'm trying to think through with Kirby, Heupel, Stoops, Drinkwitz, Napier, Lee, Beamer, Leach, Kiffin, Fisher, Saban, Harsin, Pittman, Kelly. That's all of them. I don't think there's not one in the SEC right now.
Well, I'm super interested in the XFL head coaches got announced today. And I know this is going to sound weird, but people forget Hines Ward interviewed for the Texans head coaching job.
Oh, that is weird.
That is, and nobody really ever talks about, but he's the head coach for the XFL. So him, Rod Woodson are 2 of the guys that I remember being a head coach of the XFL. So 2 guys with NFL experience, NFL pedigree. If they do good stuff here in the XFL, and they may only get a season to prove it, we don't know how deep the Rock's money is actually going to go. But if they do well, and Hines Ward already has a head coaching interview under his belt, you could see a couple of those 2 guys be that next wave or next push of people coming in.
And it doesn't have to be I'd be interested to track Hines Ward because I think he's a super smart football player. And so I think he's a really great opportunity at this. Now I would argue there's got to be other guys that aren't just like Hall of Fame caliber wide receivers that we've heard. Like Rod Woodson is just a big name. So like Eddie George is the head coach at TSU. That's not because he's a Deion Sanders at Jackson State. Like that's not because they're great head coaches. It's because they're big names and they're big personalities and they can recruit and stuff. Like Hugh Jackson being a coach at an HBCU is a real reason. Like he's been a head coach in the NFL. Like you can say what you want about his track record, but like he's at least got a track record. Like some of these guys like Deion and Eddie, they don't even have track records. They're just sort of figureheads. So I'm assuming there are hundreds of candidates that aren't just like quote unquote figurehead guys that are minority and very talented and that should be getting opportunities.
There are a few that got opportunities. Then they got their first wave of opportunities to get head coaching interviews under their belt. And that would be D'Amico Ryans and Gerard Mayo, I think, were the first 2. I think this year was their first year they actually got head coaching interviews. And they're going to get more because those guys are highly regarded in the league. Sometimes it's just timing. I don't understand why Eric Bieniemy has not gotten a head coaching job. The only thing you can point to is that he just must be a bad interview.
There's more to the story. There's got to be more to that.
There's got to be something that we're missing.
Yeah.
But I would rather take a chance on someone that's an offensive-minded guy like Eric Bieniemy, that may rub people the wrong way for whatever reason, then given a retread another try.
Give me
Like,
D'Amico Ryans. Give me D'Amico Ryans over anybody else. I'll
Yeah.
take D'Amico Ryans. No question about it. All right. Well, okay. That's enough. We realize the irony of two middle-aged white guys discussing a racial issue. But I think this is one of those situations where sort of like everything is kind of true. Like Amy Adams Strunk probably didn't do what is being claimed, but also black candidates need more opportunity. Like that's it. Like it's just sort of kind of both things at the same time. As I always say, two things can be true. Zach, are we doing some gambling today on the show?
We are. We're going to talk about some over-under win totals for the SEC. So we'll start with the SEC East. We'll go Vanderbilt. Do you think they're over/under 1.5 wins?
Is this just within the SEC?
Yeah. So this is just teams in SEC. So these are their win totals for the whole season.
For the whole season?
Yeah. It's
1.5.
Currently, win has them as 1.5.
I would take the over on that. Didn't they? I mean, I think they can go 2-10. They're not going to win 2 SEC games, but they'll go.
Right.
They're going to be better. I went and watched practice a couple of last week, and they're more athletic and a little bit more talented. And the culture starting to take root a little bit, but they're going to win non-conference games.
Yeah,
they might win one.
They're literally at 1.5 wins with, and the odds aren't great. It's minus 170. So
okay, well that's a pretty to me. If you're putting money on that, that's a no-brainer over.
Yeah. Okay, so you got Missouri at 5 wins, and the over is plus 100.
I think 5 and 7 is about right. I think I would take the under. I think next year they're going to be 2023. They're going to be better. They don't have a quarterback. They've got some 5-star weapons that are going to be very, very good. The defense was atrocious. By the way, Steve Wilkes did a terrible job with Missouri's defense last year. He's a part of the lawsuit that we just got done talking about. And had he done a great job, I might think differently of Steve Wilkes, but he did a terrible job with Missouri. I'm going to go under 5 on the Tigers.
Okay, so you're going to go under, but how good are you feeling about that bet? Because that's under is actually minus 120.
I don't love it.
You think it's more of a push situation, right?
I would not bet on that one. I would take over on Vanderbilt.
Okay, South Carolina 6 wins. Over is minus 150 and under is plus 130.
Under. I think their 6-6 record last year was a big mirage. They beat a bad Auburn and a bad Florida team, and they needed like a last-second miracle to beat Vanderbilt. That's 3 of their 6 wins. I think their roster's in major trouble, and they are way overvalued right now. I like under on that one big time. Gotcha. I know Spencer Rattler's there, and they've got some pieces. I don't think Shane Beamer knows how to coach. I think he can recruit. But
do you believe in Spencer Rattler?
No.
Because
no.
Yeah, I don't either. Like, I don't get the Spencer Rattler hype, and I didn't really get it heading into last year's college season either, because it didn't never seem like it was ever going to stick with this guy.
So huge pedigree, 5-star recruit out of Arizona, goes to Oklahoma, plays in the most quarterback-friendly system in the entire world at Oklahoma, and is good as a first-year player, but not great. Then he comes back and starts in 2021, and he gets pulled 4 games into the season. He threw 5 total touchdowns against Power 5 competition this year. And now so here's the thing, Zach. You're telling me that Spencer Rattler is going to be better on a worse team with a worse coach and a tougher schedule?
Right. Yeah, I just did not get why of all places that he chose to go when he needs to get his draft stock up, is going to go to South Carolina instead of going to a school that may be a little bit easier for him.
Two reasons. Shane Beamer was the recruiting coordinator at Oklahoma, so he's got a very good relationship with Shane Beamer. And then number 2, he's gonna start right away. And so if you listen, if you're gonna bet on yourself in the SEC, I guess, right? Give yourself a challenge,
right?
I suppose. So, but I'm with you. I'll take the under.
Okay, so we got Florida at 7 wins.
I wouldn't bet on that because I like them to be better than people think, but 7 and 5 is what I would probably project.
So that's a push. So we don't really.
You know what? It
don't
probably
want to advise people to go that.
If you think they can go into Neyland Stadium and beat Tennessee in week 3 or whatever it is on the road, like in Billy Napier's like 3rd game ever in the SEC, then I think they can get to 8 and 4. So you have to pick them to win that game. And if you think they can win that game, then they can get to 8 and 4. If not, they're probably 7 and 5 or worse. So I would not touch that one.
I think the Florida, Kentucky, Tennessee ones are pretty interesting because Kentucky's at 8. Yep. They're at 8 wins. And that's an even line almost.
That also probably depends on if Kentucky can go into Neyland Stadium and win.
Yeah.
I wouldn't touch that one either. I think their 8-4 is right on. If it was 7.5, I'd go over. If it was 8.5, I'd go under, which means Vegas has done their homework on this one. So I'm not sure I'd touch that one. Quarterback's coming back. Offensively, like they still got some weapons on that team. That's a really good football program, and so they're going to be good. I guess I would take the under, but I don't really like that one. I wouldn't touch that one.
All right, we got a lot of Tennessee fans listening and all this stuff. So they have said it. Last year, they went 7-6 overall. They have it at 8.5 wins over under.
Oh. There's no way you can bet on them to go 9-3.
You just can't do it, Katie.
I just don't think you can bet on them to go 9-3. I don't think you can do that because they got Bama and Georgia right out of the gate. You're going to lose to. So that means literally you have to go 9-1 in every other game the rest of the season. No, you can have one slip up the rest of the way. They play Pittsburgh, the defending ACC champs. You got Florida,
Kentucky.
Kentucky's really good. Like again, 8-4 with a bowl win to go 9-4 feels right, but that ninth win in a bowl doesn't count for this. So I would go under 8.5 if I was gambling.
Pretty confident.
Pretty confident, yeah. I feel better about that one than I do the Kentucky 8. Now, if it was 8, I wouldn't bet it at all.
Right.
Because I think they go 8. I would pick them to go 8-4 right now for Tennessee.
All right, Georgia's at 11.5 wins. The over is plus 200. The under is minus 250.
I might go over on that one, dude.
Oh, really?
I might go over on that one. Yeah. I wouldn't bet it. I wouldn't bet it, but I would take the 12-0 before I'd take 11-1.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
But I probably, you know what? Now that I've said it out loud, I probably would not bet that.
Yeah, I don't think you really want to bet that one. I don't think you really want to bet the Alabama one either.
They were 11, I think, last year, and I took the over and it hit. But I think last year's team was a little different than this year's team. Yeah,
this year's team has lost a lot on defense, and I'm interested to see. Yeah, I'm interested to see how that affects the team for sure. All right, we're heading over to the West. All Auburn, right. 5 wins.
Oh God, that's disgusting. That's vomit inducing. I think I would. Oh God, Jesus. Over maybe, but man, that could be a total dumpster fire.
Yeah, I'm with you.
First of all, here's a rule: don't ever bet on Auburn to do anything ever.
Yeah,
just don't bet on them.
What about LSU 6 wins? Because I think I would go under.
Every penny I have on this one over. One of my most confident picks. One of my most confident picks of the entire season. I think LSU is going to be real good, real fast. They are not going to be. They're not going to be good enough to beat any of the best teams, but they are going to be. They have lots of dudes, and Brian Kelly is a proven instantaneous winner every single place he's been. They'll be back to their sort of a certain plateau pretty quickly. And then they won't be able to go over that plateau because Brian Kelly won't be able to out recruit Nick Saban. But I think this is like an 8 or 9 win team. I would take
I just want you to know that I'm typing this down and I'm putting a date on there because we're going to come back to this at some point because I disagree. But
all right, okay,
we'll see.
Fair enough. Over 6.
Okay, over 6.
I'm betting right. I'm going to the phone right now to bet. I'm placing that bet right now.
Mississippi State 6.5 wins.
Over.
Whoa.
17 returning starters, the most of any team in all of Power 5 college football. A quarterback who threw for 4,700 yards last year, which would have been a record in the SEC if not for 2 guys named Joe Burrow and Bryce Young. So Will Rogers established. Mike Leach, 3rd year. Sneaky good defensive coordinator. If you guys want a name to keep an eye on for future bigger jobs and NFL jobs, Zach Arnett at Mississippi State, doing a lot of good work on the defensive side of that ball. That is a very sneaky good football team. Over 6.5 for Mississippi State.
Okay,
you're writing all this down.
Very confident. That's confident. I'm making I'm also building us a parlay over here, so we're gonna see with your very confident picks, see where we can win.
All right,
Arkansas 6.5 wins.
I'm gonna run out of wins and losses here at some point if I keep picking overs.
Right. I would think that's going to be an under.
Arkansas is a really tricky team for me. I really like their quarterback. I really like their coach, Sam Pittman, and their culture. Their depth chart's really nice. but they're one of these really trendy picks already for teams. Like they're already super trendy to be like a top 15 preseason team. And I generally don't like it when teams get like this over. They're kind of getting overhyped right now. Arkansas is. I really like
they don't
them.
have a defense. And I think that with these other teams, they're going to have an issue of finishing games.
And they play Cincinnati in the non-conference, a very good Cincinnati team, even though they're losing Desmond Ridder and Sauce Gardner. I would stay completely away from that. I could see the over at 7-5, but I would stay away from that one because I think, I might go over on that one, but I don't feel good about that one. So
Ole Miss 8 wins.
Under.
Yeah.
I like
Are you confident in the under?
Look at the sort of confident. I'm halfway confident. I'm sort of like the officials during an Ole Miss Tennessee game. I'm not exactly sure what happened to the football. I would go under. Look at their last 5 games of their schedule. Like they might start the year 7-0 and finish 7-5.
Gotcha.
Because their last 5 games are like LSU, Alabama, A&M. Like it's like the best teams in the conference there, and Mississippi State to finish. So
yeah, Texas A&M 9 wins.
That's about right. I would go over.
But it sounds like a reluctant over.
Yeah, it's very reluctant. And the issue is not A&M. I think A&M is preseason top 5 in the country.
Yeah.
It's more about how deep the West is. Mississippi State, Arkansas, LSU, Ole Miss, like even though some of those I'm picking unders are pretty good teams. Like Auburn could get you. Like even though they're the worst, Auburn's going to be picked last in the division, and Auburn still might be good enough to beat one of these teams. So It's more about can they survive the schedule more than anything else. I like A&M to be very, very good this year. I guess I'll take the over. Get them to 10-2 with a loss to Bama and probably one more loss somewhere along the way. 10-2, right on the outside of the playoff conversation. A&M.
Alabama 11.5 wins.
I mean, the smart play is over because when they get beat and they don't do what they're supposed to do, generally they come back and go like scorched earth on America. So they also have the best offensive player in college football, the best defensive player in college football, and the greatest coach in the history of mankind. So 12-0 feels right. They get A&M at home. I feel more confident in over for Bama than I do for Georgia. How about that?
Okay, it's plus 200 for the over.
I like I like that. Give me those. Give me the odds and give me the 12-0. It doesn't mean they win the SEC championship game, and it doesn't mean they win the national title. But in the regular season, I think they're going to be on a mission with Bryce Young. So I guess I'll take the over.
Your big confident plays have been Mississippi State over 6.5 wins.
Yep.
LSU over 6 wins.
Yep.
Tennessee under 8.5 wins. South Carolina under 6 wins, and Vanderbilt over 1.5 wins. Those are your big 5.
I think I would rank Mississippi State and LSU on the tier by themselves.
Gotcha.
I think I might put Vanderbilt number 3.
Gotcha.
I think they get to 2-10.
If you played those 5 in a parlay, you would win. If you bet $100, you'd win $2,246.83. That seems like a pretty good little chunk of change for those.
Oh man, I would do LSU, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. But the only reason I'd put Tennessee in there is for mental purposes, because then if I lose that money, I'm happy because Tennessee's better.
That's a pretty good parlay. I think I may actually play that parlay myself.
I wouldn't play all 5 of them because that's too many odds for me. Parlays are designed.
If you're going to take one out, you're going to take South Carolina out.
I would take South Carolina. Yeah. Parlays are designed statistically to take your money, Zach.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Oh, I know.
Like that's what they're
Trust
for.
me. They have taken a lot of money from me. I know.
All right. What else? Hey, what do you guys got on football and other F words this week? What do you got on Broadway Sports Media?
So on football and other F words this week, we talked about the Rooney Rule a little bit more in depth than what we did on this conversation. We also talked about the Dwayne Haskins media fiasco that was covering him between Gil Brandt and Adam Schefter. I mean, they just dropped the ball majorly.
Wait, let me ask you this, because I have not had a chance to listen to your show yet. Why does anyone give a shit about what Adam Schefter tweeted about this? Why does it matter?
I think it's a larger indictment, and this is kind of what we talked about of him just being a sleazeball. He's a scumbucket.
But like he tweeted, there was nothing that wasn't factually true in that tweet.
Do you really need to, though, put in that someone struggled? First off, he was the first one to announce the death. So he's the first one to it. And he announces that this Dwayne Haskins struggled to
he also called him a standout in the same sentence.
But an Ohio standout, which you didn't have to do. Which is
all factually true. All of it's factually
it may be factually true, but do you want to be remembered for something bad? Your first announcement tweet is Braden Gall, standout businessman, starting 440 Sports,
fired from multiple jobs,
and got punched by someone. Do you want that in your announcement death tweet?
No, I don't want anyone tweeting about my death. Hopefully, but now my only to be fair, I'm going to promote something here because I interrupted your promotion. But Steve Cavendish and I will have a longer conversation about Adam Schefter on Lamestream Sports. I think it is a product of his bad 18 months more than it is an actual incorrect tweet on this particular subject. It is that's I'll just leave it at that. And I apologize for cutting you off.
Well, I just think he's just a sleazeball in general. And it's a large, we talked about the larger issue of media people treating people, the NFL players, as NFTs or Bitcoin more so than actual people. And we talk about the larger indictment.
But then he's carrying water for Dalvin Cook then. Who's a bigger sleaze bucket than he is. So I don't know.
Hey, listen, it's all about whatever money goes into his pocket. I mean, he's a robot that is being fed money. that's his fuel.
He's also making like $8 million a year from ESPN, just signed a new contract. So they like him,
which is utterly ridiculous.
I think he's had a very bad 18 months, and I think this is the least wrong thing that he's done.
I could agree with that. I think it's just.
All right.
I think it's actually reprehensible, but I think I could agree that on the scale of everything that he is doing, this is probably the least one. Maybe the Derrick Henry falls under this.
I think Derrick Henry is in the same category. I think Titans fans have it out for Adam Schefter. I also feel gross defending Adam Schefter, and I don't like doing that either. So,
well, I think it's a problem that was his first instinct. It's like Gil Brandt's first instinct was to bring up some draft party, and this guy should have stayed in school, and he had leadership problems. Schefter's first instinct was to make sure that he included that this guy struggled. I think that's an indictment of the person.
Okay. All right.
In a way,
I think that if he just posts backup quarterback Dwayne Haskins dies in car wreck, I think he gets hammered for being insensitive. I think he gets hammered. Why didn't you put anything else in there? Father, husband, brother, mother, cousin, whatever. I think he gets
Does
hammered.
He really? Maybe he needs to not have to feel this need to be the first one to break the news of someone's death. Maybe that's a little bit of a problem.
Getting paid $9 million to do that, Zach.
I guess so.
All right. Sorry to interrupt your promotional campaign.
I'm doing the best of the best for draft information. So the most accurate mock drafters on Monday at BroadwaySportsMedia.com was this past Monday. I take a look at, there's an actual website that grades mock drafts and keeps up with who's accurate. And they do a rolling 5-year average. So I looked at who those people were, pulled up their latest mock drafts and their picks for the Titans. And I analyzed those picks. And I'll probably continue to do that on every Monday because it's nice to see a tour of all 50,000 mock drafts, but you need to narrow that down at some point, right? Because you need to go to the most accurate ones.
All right.
Now,
I like it.
And there's a website that grades it. Why not use it and make mock drafts relevant again? Wednesday, I put out at 7:30 in the morning. There was one for the best draft guide. So I did national and local draft guides and the best paid, the best free of each of those subsections and those categories. So, shed some light on some people doing some work in the Nashville area. And then on Friday, I am going to do the best rumor mills. Who do you need to believe and stay tuned into that's going to give you adequate information and the best information?
I like it.
I'll give you a hint. It's none of the guys you're probably familiar with. Maybe Tony Pauline is probably the most familiar person maybe out there. And I don't even think he's that familiar. And then I'm going to do next week, I have an article coming out where basically if you miss out on Chris Olave in the first round, if you're a Titans fan, here's some wide receivers that you can get later that may be Chris Olave 2.0 or light diet Chris Olave.
Yep.
So I'm taking some people like that and saying it's not over if you don't get Chris Olave, or it's not over if you don't get Kenyon Green or Zion Johnson or someone like that.
Those are three good names. Chris Olave, by the way. Chris Olave.
I think he needs another like emblem or something on top of that E.
Trey, yeah, like a little tilde there.
Yeah.
Treylon Burke's another good option there as well.
Yeah.
Who's actually
I'm a big Treylon Burks guy.
He's very much like AJ Brown, actually, just bigger and stronger and faster than he plays, and
just move him around because that's what they want to do. They don't need a strictly slot guy. I think people are pigeonholed into that thinking.
So BroadwaySportsMedia.com is the website. Check it out. All of Zach's scribings there. Make sure you review and rate and subscribe to all of this here product, the 440 here. We're going to be doing this show on Thursday here for a couple of weeks, and we'll have some stuff for you for the draft as well. So stay tuned. Keep an eye on the YouTube page as well. Make sure you call the Kingston Group if you got any questions about your house. BuildKG.com, of course, is the website. Just go look at their work and have a conversation with them. I promise you will not be disappointed. Zach, where can people find you on the Twitters?
At FWordsPod.
And make sure you listen to that podcast, Football and Other F Words, with Mr. Lebowski. Everywhere podcasts are found. My name is Braden Gall. Thank you guys all for listening. We'll talk to you again next week. This has been a football show here on the 440 Sports Network.